Fate decided.
Let's get this party started.
Craven something scary.
Hello, Sydney.
KillJoy Jake.
Don't you swear at me, you little shit! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother!
Nightwatch Zone.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
Get up!
The collective has spoken. Yo, what's going on? Mondays with the Lethal Collective. And it's a special Monday, so to speak. We are putting it out to our viewers. Ask us anything, whatever you guys want to ask us or whatever you guys want to talk about within reason. What's up, Jake and Fate?
What's up?
How you guys doing?
No, literally anything.
See, I knew that you would say something like that, and watch the type of shit that comes in here. I can't
wait. I'm excited for it. Let's see.
Yeah.
Fate, what is your exact address? Where do you live?
He said your exact address. I like that.
What is your social security number?
What
What is your banking routing number?
Oh my God! Wow. Blanket hello to everybody. We'll catch a couple of you guys here. Russell's in the chat. Russell, you are the OG, bro. You are the OG, no doubt. The general is in the chat. What's up,
General?
What's up, Nathan? Good to see you. And Val, I'm telling you, man, nobody works harder than Val. Literally laying out the rules. Like, subscribe, share it, give out your addresses, everything. Everything. Bobby's in the chat. What's up? All right. Good to see you, man. Hope you're doing good. We got Byron. Good to see you. Let's see. And Wayne is in the chat. What's up, Wayne? Good to see you. Horror B, what's going on? Good to see you. And Mega Giants. All right. Saying hey, everyone. Ethan is in the chat. What's up? Saying Scream 6 digital tomorrow.
Yeah.
Time flies, man. It seems like we were just doing like a countdown to see it, doesn't it, man?
It's like a month later now. It's nuts.
It is crazy,
Literally.
man. It's funny. I just watched it again. When was it? I don't know. It was recently, so I've seen it a couple times now. In other words, and man, it's a fun time, man. It really, really is.
Oh yeah, man.
I'm telling you, they did a lot of crazy shit in that movie. I was really happy with it. I really was.
I'm
A lot of
hyped for
firsts.
I'm hyped for the Steelbook, man. That comes out here in like 2-3 months, right?
Wow.
It's like a late June release or something. So
I think so.
yeah, I'm hyped, man. It looks really cool. I hopefully we get a Scream 3 and Scream 4 Steelbook as well, and then old Jake will be happy.
Get a box set.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Steelbook box set.
that would be sick.
Man.
Even better.
That would be
I
cool.
have a quick question to start us off because I'd love to hear your guys' opinion since we didn't get to talk about this on Monday. So what is your bank accounts in right now? I'm sure. Scream 6 very likely could be it for Radio Silence, right? They're gonna go do that monster movie. They're taking Melissa Barrera with her. Are you guys concerned about Scream 7? Do you think there will be a hiatus? And do you think it's possible that they do Scream 7 not only without Radio Silence, but what about without Melissa Barrera?
I think that would mean the core four just wouldn't be in it. I don't know how you could tell a story with those characters without Sam. You know what I mean?
I absolutely have the answer, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts first.
I mean, it would be Night. I'll let you go. Because I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say is that it could go either way. As far as with Radio Silence, I think part of it is they're trying to still figure out the timetable You know what I mean? Do they take a little bit longer of a break than they did between 5 and 6? You know, in other words, let Radio Silence kind of do what they got to do and then come back together. You know, in other words, we don't have to rush to do 7. 6 did really well. Let's take our time. Or are they thinking we got to strike while the iron is hot and kind of still have that same timeline that they had between 5 and 6? Personally speaking, based off of 6 and how much I enjoyed it, I think they should just take their time with it. I mean, I'm not talking 5 or 6 years later, but I'm just saying, you know, if it has to take an extra year, you know, off of that timetable, I would be fine with waiting for Radio Silence and Melissa, especially because of Melissa's performance in 6. I absolutely loved her in 6. What will they do? Man, it's hard to say. I think it could go either way. I do think if Radio Silence doesn't come back and if they abandon the core 4, personally, I think that would be a mistake. Even though I'm all about crafting new frontiers, new paths, and stuff like that. I mean, if they abandon all of that and they come up with a great story and it's fresh and all that great stuff, fine. But I think this is a special group. You know, I'd be willing to see them one more round. So, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I love the group we got going here, especially after 6. Like, I maybe after 5, I was kind of iffy about them. But now after this past film, I'm like, I would love to see them again for another film. So I hope they bring them back. What I think is going to happen in my head, especially after seeing the production weekly for Radio Silence's new movie, it's like it's gonna be Dracula's daughter is like what it says on there. They're not releasing that publicly yet, but I'm kind of hyped for whatever their new take on that's gonna be. But it seems like I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was either May or June that thing like ends filming.
Right.
So realistically, they could start filming Scream 7 in the fall.
Yep.
That's totally possible with what the situation is right now. But I will say, Christopher Landon just followed a bunch of people from the Core 4 and our new Scream films. So they might have him on board to direct, but I don't think here's what I think will realistically happen. I think Radio Silence is gone. I think they're done with the franchise, and that makes me really sad. But Christopher Landon, I think, will hop on board the director's seat, and it's going to be with the same characters from the past couple of films. That's my guess as to how they're going to handle things. I don't know. I just don't see Radio Silence coming back at this point with how much they have lined up. I want them to. I really do. But I've also, there's rumor right now that like the studio wants them to start working on 7 this year. So like, I feel like that's going to happen. The night you were talking about striking while the iron is hot. It's fucking hot.
It is. It is.
And listen, man, it hasn't been hot for a while. Even with Scream 4, that movie barely made money. This franchise really hasn't been hot since like the late 90s, early thousands. So to me, if I'm a studio executive and I'm not like a Scream fan, I'm more of a, we got to make money on this franchise kind of dude. What I'm thinking in my head is, well, this is popular again ever since the 90s, basically. Let's pump them out. I feel, and I don't necessarily agree with that ideology, but I think that's what's happening right now.
So a couple things. One, I agree. I think Radio Silence is likely done. And look, I love Radio Silence. I thought they were great. I mean, we've all defended them on numerous occasions even. I think they're fantastic. But they didn't do anything that was like revolutionary, that's strictly only radio. It's not like they use some like software or something, or some special technical equipment that nobody can replicate that they like pioneered or something like that, right? I mean, they're just the ones that are putting the words to visuals. And so I think that somebody else can do that. You can't just have anybody do that. It's got to be somebody that makes sense. You don't want somebody that's like, this is their first horror movie. Like they've been doing rom-coms their whole career and now they're stepping in. That'll have me a little concerned. But, something like a Landon, something like that comes in, I'm okay with that. It's not out of the realm possibility that many directors have done multiple films in a year, right? They'll film for 3 or 4 months over here, take like a month off, and then go film over here. It happens. Melissa Barrera, she's pumping out like 3 or 4 movies a year anyway. So she could easily go do that and then just go do Scream. But so they've shown the willingness to like, hey, let's move. We got to get the ball rolling regardless, right? With the whole Sydney thing. I could see them, like, if Melissa Barrera isn't ready and they're ready to go, I could see them just making the adjustments in this film and doing it without her, which you could do, right? At the end of Scream 6, what was the whole point of, like, Scream 6 throughout and the dynamic between Sam and Tara? Sam letting go of that stronghold she had over Tara, right? The whole metaphor, her letting her go and trusting her, and then, you know, that whole thing. And then at the end, they kind of walk away. And not saying that she doesn't want her in her life, because I said this in a video and somebody was like, did you watch the movie at the end? She said, you know, that that doesn't mean that that's it. We're not sisters anymore. It just means she doesn't want her being overbearing, living with her. She wants to live her own life. She wants to be able to go live her life. Well, you have Josh Segura's character, Danny, and Sam as a couple. They could go. Tara could be live in college. Her and Chad are together. You got Mindy, and maybe she's in a new relationship or something. You got introduced some new characters, and you could have the film centered around like Tara and Chad and their relationship and their dynamic, and them tackling on the challenges of Ghostface. And maybe Sam, you know, she's in wherever, she's in Costa Rica or whatever with Josh, you know, just on a you know, vacation, trying to get away, just get away from it all, go let Tara kind of live her life. You could easily explain it and have it come in. And you could even argue Scream 6 gave a conclusive ending to the Sam arc, right? She went full circle. She had the moment. She, you know, shows her sister and everything over like her inner demon. You have the symbolism of the Ghostface mask. I don't think it would be impossible to do. I imagine that they would want to do it with Sam. I've seen people say, like, you know, why not just bring Sydney back and have that? But even then, it's just, again, I kind of feel like you're going backwards, right? I just think, like, a lot of people still want Tara to be the focus. Sam was great. I liked Sam. I've stuck up for Sam. Even since Scream 5, I thought she was fine. You know, so I could see them kind of going, well, Jenna Ortega is still Jenna Ortega. She's still a huge face and is going to be a huge draw. She's a great actress. We can make this movie center and focus around her more. And that story, that dynamic, we already have a storyline that was already established in Scream 6 that we can continue. And they could easily do this movie without Melissa. And then maybe Scream 8 is where Melissa comes back, and or maybe we get a cliffhanger, right? Maybe Melissa's like, hey, I can't do when you want to do this one, but if we do another film, and then maybe you set it up to where Sam comes and saves the day. Or maybe there's some brief scene or something that Melissa just comes and shoots for 3 days, you know, or something like that, where it's like at the end, she's getting off the plane, like, I'm coming, Tara, or something like that. You could easily do something like that. I don't think it would be, I mean, obviously we want, in a perfect world, Radio Silence and Melissa Barrera, because that's what they've established and they've done a good job so far. Right. So it's just, where do they go? I mean, even Blucka said technically they could continue it with Kirby, which is true. They could. I mean, they could have Kirby investigating the whole Ghostface murders. I don't think it's, because again, it's strike while the iron is hot, right? You know, and this trilogy thing is a big thing for horror films right now. You know, you have this hiatus, and I get there was a hiatus between Scream, you know, there was like 2.5, 3 years between Scream 2 and Scream 3. I don't think that's the end of the world. But here's the thing that I try to hit on, that, you know, people that are in this chat and in general, like, that watch our videos need to understand. We're a small minority in the overall viewer audience, right? Yeah. We can wait. We as the Scream fans, we as the fandom, we just want a good movie with the characters we love. We don't care. But we're probably 5%, if that, of the general audience of diehard Scream fans. Most people that are going in are just like, hey, Ghostface, I know that. Let me go watch this movie. Most people aren't watching videos, going through the ins and outs, reading all the reports, doing, like, most people don't care. They just want to go see the movie. Is it a good movie? Yes. Cool. I liked it. Was it a terrible movie? No. Or yes. Okay. I don't like it. That's usually how it is. So from a studio perspective, they aren't thinking about how we feel entirely. They're taking some ideas from us, clearly. I mean, Scream 6 was basically just like all of the ideas from Reddit all thrown into the movie. So they are taking ideas, but those ideas also appeal to a general audience, something that's fresh, something that's new. So I'm sure they're thinking we need to capitalize as much as possible on just the financials, right? And you got to remember, they spent a ton of money on the IP of Scream. They're still in the negative, Even with the success of Scream 5 and even with the success of Scream 6. I don't remember what the numbers were off the top of my head, Jake, but I know I sent them to you if you got it. But yeah, like they're still well in the hole. Like I don't know exactly if those numbers are 100% accurate, but they are still well in the hole, a couple $100 million.
So what I found is that it wasn't just for the Scream franchise; it was like all of the
it was a catalog
properties.
But the Scream was the major one. Scream was the big one, and they've only used 2 of the IP or 2 or 3 of the IPs.
But they have more to work with. I like when I was looking through, like there was like at least a couple of things where I'm like, if they made another one of these, like people would see it. You know, I can't. Once again, I'm not very fresh on this. I've had kind of a disastrous day, so my mind is all over the place. But I like seeing that though, looking more into it, because I always thought it was just for Scream that they paid like $500 million for it, but it's like more IPs.
It was like 100 films or whatever.
Yeah,
but like 90 of them are just like dead dormant. I mean, they were just basically scraps. It was just like, hey, you got to take these 2, you know, kind of that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I want to say there was like 3 or 4 IPs in there where I'm like, they could still make money off of these. Like I could see these being movies at some point. But I do agree, the Scream is definitely the hot button item here. I think they have to move on that. Like they do, and they're going to, if it's good or not, if the product is something we all want, or if it's something that they're just going to make for money, which is the unfortunate truth.
Knight, if you bring up Bloodstain, he tells you how much it is. There you go.
That's also true. Yeah, about the Lionsgate thing.
They also sold 200 to 270 films as well. 20% of the company Lionsgate to help make up the huge chunk of that. Yeah, I mean, another thing is too to consider is because Paramount got a percentage, Spyglass owns like the majority, but Lionsgate's got some and Paramount's got some. Do they, like, if they can't get this together, do they just rent the IP to somebody, like another studio? I mean, that's a possibility.
Well, we've seen that happen before.
Yeah, several times, right? I mean, if they already have the script done and everything, they could say, hey, we already have it done. We got to find a director. I mean, granted, I think it'd be better for them to just get a director and do a movie without Sam than do that, but it could be a way to recoup some money.
It's also not like they're losing money on this, though. You know what I mean? I mean, like they're getting there. Like a couple more movies, and they'll make their money back.
Yeah, but that's my point. They have to do a couple more because
I don't think they're in disaster territory yet. Like
they're not at DEFCON 5.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not there yet.
How much money did they really make? Is the question. Yes, they made, what is it, 260 million, something like that right now off of Scream 6 off the top of my head. It's not counting budget, that's not counting marketing, that's not counting studio. They probably cleared 20 million when all is said and done. Like that, and you owe like 400. I mean, you'd have to make 20 movies just to break even.
You think they only made 20 million like off of everything?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. I mean, you got to take into account.
I don't know about that.
I'm telling you, because here's the thing: we'll never know the real numbers because they always just show this is what it made. You never know,
right? Yeah, how much was all the cost? Yeah, how it's distributed. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, and people also always take into account, like, so Scream 6, yes, it broke all the records, but if you adjust for inflation, it was one of the worst grossing Scream movies in the franchise. Like, that's something else that doesn't get talked about, right? People just look at like, oh yeah, but tickets are $15 now as compared to 7 million. So that means double the amount of people were watching the original Scream trilogy as compared to now. So all of those are a factor, all of those things, which means equipment costs, marketing, all of that stuff is also increased. So my point is, I don't think they've probably, let's say they made 100 million profit between both Scream movies, because Scream 1 did what, 260 or 250, and then this one's done like 260 or whatever. So let's say it costs 200 million between everything when all is said and done. They made $100 million. They're still in the hole like 300 million. So if Scream is the big IP that they're going to ride the wave on, they need to make another 8 movies just to break even.
I just think if that's like, I don't know. To me, if that's true, then why are they even making these movies? Like,
I was just about to say that if
why would they do that?
well, I mean, unless there was just that idea of expecting that it was going to do more or do better or whatever.
You're talking about a big franchise. You're talking about films. You're talking about series. You're talking about you're talking about expanding into merchandise, stuff like that. Like, because that's where a lot of this gets. It's owning the IP and being able to create several.
My other to my point there though too is like they probably like going into this they know they wanted to do something similar to what's going on with Halloween right now. Like that first movie made like well over $200 million like worldwide, but like then the other ones didn't do as well. So they're like, well, we can probably do that, but like about the same. And for the most part, they've gotten pretty close to that. I mean, like Scream 6 beat out Halloween Kills already, if I'm remembering correctly. So I mean, they're doing about what was probably estimated. I mean, once again, I just don't know. They've got to be making more money than that. Like, there's no, they wouldn't. I don't think they would make that deal if it was that low, because like they knew these movies weren't going to break 200 million. I think they knew that going into it. Halloween, it was a shock that Halloween 2018 broke 200 million. I mean, it was a huge horror hit. It's an outlier. Even I would even go so far as to say. So like, I don't know if that's true. That's a really stupid decision on their part. I love Screams 5 and 6, but it doesn't make any sense for them to make that decision.
There's more money. There's more money than just. It's about you're paying to own the IP. So like even after all this said and done, let's say we get Scream 8, right? Let's say we get 2 more movies after this, right? Well, now they own the IP, they own the rights, they can sell the rights and make another $100 million in the rights, and then when that's, I mean, they own the rights now forever. So it's not just like, oh, we're only gonna make like 50 million a movie every movie, but it's like, no, we can make 50 million a movie or 30 million a movie for 3 or 4 movies. Right? Or let's say 5. Let's say you do 5 movies here. You do a TV series. If that has success, now you're talking, maybe you're making another 10, 12 million per series or whatever. Well, now you also own the IP, so you could do like merchandise. You could do all that. So that's where the big money's at. So now you're making that. They'll make, when all is said and done, they'll probably make $1 billion off of Scream when all is said and done. But you got to get the ball rolling, So they bought it like. Yeah, even if these films only, let's say they only did 200 million, it's a start, and you start generating buzz. Scream 6 did better than Scream 5. Now your hope is Scream 7 does better. But the point is, you got to keep going, which is why I keep saying. And look, there may be a hiatus. I don't know. I'm not in the studio. I don't know. But you would think, with all the circumstances, everything that's happened, that they're not going to want to have a 2-3 year hiatus and Scream cools down. And now, now they only make 180 million for Scream 7 because, it's like, I just think they have no choice almost. They're going to have to. I'm not saying it's going to, maybe it comes out in 2025 and we get like a full year in between, but I don't think they're going to have a 2-3 years. And if Melissa can't do it, I think they move on. If Jenna Ortega can't do it, I think they move on. I mean, whatever they got to do, I think that they move on because they're going to look at it as like, we are in the hole bad and we can't just sit on this IP. So either they make the movies themselves or they license it away so that way people can make it. So I don't think we're going to get a hiatus.
Well, there you go.
I really think that they're going to make another one and it's probably going to come out either late next year or early 2025. Like that's really my, I don't know. I mean, like Blucka makes another good point about merchandising and all that. Yeah. But once again, it's the movies where you make the big bucks. So I imagine that they got another one coming. I imagine they got another one coming. Melissa Barrera is not as busy as she seems. Maybe Jenna Ortega is the one I'm a little more worried about. But I really think the biggest thing to worry about right now is who's going to be the director, the creative force behind it. That's what's still up in the air right now. We don't even have any confirmation about Christopher Landon. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
Do you like Christopher Landon though?
Yeah.
As a horror director?
Yeah. I mean, what do you guys think of like Happy Death Day? Like that feels very Scream to me.
Yeah, it's very. I feel like it's very much in the same territory as Scream. So I think it actually would be a very good fit. I actually that was a big surprise for me. I enjoyed Happy Death Day quite a bit, and I didn't know if I would when I first.
Even part 2 was pretty good.
Yeah, part 2 was pretty good too. So I think that it's very similar. You're kind of in the same ballpark, and I think that it would be a good fit. Put it that way. I think if Radio Sounds doesn't come back, that'd be a good fit.
Yeah. The question though is because Happy Death Day and part 2, they're kind of goofy, right? Like they're fun, they're funny, humor. Scream 5 a little bit. Scream 6 wasn't super humorous. Like that was darker, that was more like that was a more intense Scream movie. So
Mm-hmm.
like they have made an effort to kind of move away from like the goofy almost horror comedy into like a more serious toned, like this is a traditional real slasher, like with blood, guts, gore, like all of that. Does Christopher Landon, is he capable of doing that, or is he going to want to make it like like Happy Death Day, where it's going to be kind of goofy and I don't know.
You know, with Scream, you got to walk a line. You know what I mean? Like what I love about Radio Silence is they walked that line a little, you know, maybe a little more to the right, a little more towards the gore and the insanity that horror films can ensue.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I love what they did with Scream. They made 2 darker Scream films that I really like. They're very high in my rankings. I could see them making the choice to bring Christopher Landon on because his movies feel so Scream 2 and Scream 3 inspired, where and
Right.
I think there's a longing for that in the franchise as well. Like I don't think it's a bad move. I don't think I'll like them more than Screams 5 and 6 personally, but like if anyone's going to do the next one that's going to keep in the same vein and not just make it Terrifier or make it something that it's not, you know, I think Christopher Landon's going to do that the best. I've always felt like you can't just throw anybody at the Scream at the Scream IP, because then they're just gonna some people are just gonna make it a straight up slasher and then they're gonna miss the point. Christopher Landon would make it goofier, but I would probably still enjoy that, and it would probably still feel like a Scream movie. I think there's a lot of people out there who want Scream to be that again anyways, so I don't see it as a bad move. It's not something I'm like, oh my god, like yeah, they gotta make it goofy again. I don't know about that, but
well, and I also think it depends on the type of comedy we have, because I think there's some comedy that is truly like it's just kind of like silly, but then you've got some comedy, and not to reference Radio Silence again, but like in Ready or Not, I think there was some really funny moments in it, but it didn't feel like goofy, you know. And maybe I don't know, maybe it's just I don't know, you know, it's a different type of comedy that you can have.
Yeah, and I'm not giving Christopher Landon enough credit either. I mean, even though, yes, Happy Death Day and Freaky and all those movies, they're very goofy, they do have this human edge to them that's really well done. And I think I could, like, that's the part of Scream that I feel like most directors will miss. They'll approach it like it's a slasher movie. Oh, who cares about the characters? You know, let's just kill some people, get some guy in a ghost face mask, we'll be good. But Scream is also big time about the characters. So if Landon does it, I know that element to it will be well preserved. That's important to me.
Strong. Yeah, Radio Silence isn't officially out yet, at least that we have not heard, Derek, but we're just theorizing if they are.
I mean, everything they've
it's
said,
looking that way.
Yeah, everything they've said is like, oh, well, we hope the franchise continues. You don't say that if you're making the next one, you know?
Yeah,
that's true.
And on top of that, you know, like the whole Christopher Landon thing, like, I don't know, like, if it's not if Radio Silence comes back, I'd be surprised at this point. Mm-hmm. Like if they I would genuinely be surprised, like if they end up doing another Scream movie with Radio Silence. I'm not saying that they won't maybe later on, especially like let's say they do Scream 6, 7, and 8, and it isn't what people are liking. I could see them being like, hey, come back, please. Here's some money. Come back. Like I could see that. But
here's some money. Come on.
Yeah, here's some money. Just money make it rain.
Also, I just think Radio Silence wants to do other things. You know, like
I mean, that's the other part of it too.
They're starting to get that recognition. They were small and kind of doing these like little, YouTube projects and stuff like that, and then broke into, why am I blanking on it? The movie with Samara Weaving. Why am I
Ready
blanking
or Not?
On it? Yeah, Ready or Not. Thank you. And then they broke into Radio or Not, and then that kind of was like, oh, they could probably do a Scream movie, and then that got them the Scream movie, and now they have like these other projects that they want to work on, that were projects that they wanted to work on before Scream, right? Like these were all things that they had planned before Scream. But you know, when you have an opportunity to, you know, do a franchise like Scream, and they're fanboy geeks when it comes to Wes Craven and the Scream franchise, you know, I mean, based on what they said, I mean, how much is that just pandering to? Hey, we're doing this. We're doing the Scream movie, so of course it's my favorite franchise ever. But it does seem like they genuinely care. It does seem like it's
well. And also, Radio Silence, I don't think it was an accident that Radio Silence got Scream 5. You know what I mean? Like, Ready or Not feels very Scream inspired. It's definitely taken down a faster pace route with, you know, maybe a different and darker sense of humor. But it does have the same flow of a Scream movie. It has that fun energy to it. Like, you're watching all these aristocrats run around their own home and try to find somebody, and they can't even do that. There's something inherently really goofy about that. And I love that about Ready or Not. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. And I totally see that translated into the Scream franchise with their entries as well.
I totally agree. And real quick too, we have another question from Yusuf that came up a while back, saying, "Where do you guys rank 6 among the previous films? Where do we rank it?"
I go first. I put it up there as it might be the best sequel in the franchise. Like I said, there's a lot of flaws, there's a lot of issues I have with it, but I can also remove, like, just look at it from like compare it to the others and remove my little biases, and I think it is arguably the best Scream sequel. So I'd probably put it up behind 96, go 96, and then Scream 6. Personally, wow. I think it's been the best sequel, like start to back. Changing up the formula, doing different things, keeping the dark undertone, keeping audiences engaged. You know, again, had its flaws, but every Scream movie has. So it's true. Yeah, I mean, they all have. Like, outside of 96 is probably about as close to a perfect movie as you get. Outside of that, they've all had major issues, major flaws. So it's just kind of like, which one can you look past and think is the better of the films inherently? I think, if you just boil it down, I think Scream 6 is the best. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Scream 6 has its issues, but it's every issue that you can bring up is something that another sequel in this franchise has. I remember just coming out of the theater and thinking that was awesome, and then going online and so many people had like, I'm like, you have a problem with Chad living, but you're totally fine with Dewey living through Scream 2. And okay, hey man, that's fine. I don't know, but I love Scream 6. I think it's a banger. It's definitely my favorite sequel. I think, and it just tries so many different things out. That's really fun and really fresh. To do that in the 6th entry of any franchise is really remarkable. And I love what they did in the opening. I love what they did with the ending and some of the weird shit in the middle. Some of the best kills in the franchise too. Love it. It's a fun one.
Yeah, you know, I pretty much agree. I mean, although it's tough, man. It's tough because I really enjoy all of the movies to some degree, but I can easily say I think 6 was such a better overall product than 5. You know, when I left the theater for 5, I was thinking, that was pretty good, but you know, there were some things that were kind of like, When I left 6, man, I was just amped up. I was hyped up. I was like excited, kind of like what you were saying, Jake. I got online. I was like, wow, you know, you were just seeing a lot of cool shit in that movie. It was like a real roller coaster, and I think that's a huge strength of it. I love the characters and their chemistry. So yeah, I could say I'd put 6 after 96. You know, I could do that. It was so much fun, man. Like, and to be quite honest, you know, we're talking about this whole stuff about what's going to happen in 7. It kind of makes me nervous, you know, with the prospect of maybe them blowing all that up. In a way, you know, it could be cool if they come up with something that's really cool and maybe even better. But you know, I definitely think they hit a nice sweet spot with 6, with what they did in the story. And these characters, I think these characters were just fun to follow. Like, I was so invested in them, man. Like, you know, you've got those scenes like in the apartment, and even, you know, when I had already seen it and I'm watching those scenes, I'm like, come on, get out of there, you know, and they're on the ladder and I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, so it's like I was really invested in this crew. So yeah, I definitely think I could put 6 after the original. Yeah, no doubt.
Fair.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Extrons in the chat. Maybe David Gordon Green will write Scream 7.
Oh man.
Yeah.
He'll do he'll do 8 and it'll be like some hodgepodge mess that
Rowan
Oh,
Campbell's the lead in it.
yeah, it is just
Just about him. He's on a motorcycle the whole time. That's all it is.
right,
Yeah.
right. I don't
How,
know about that.
how much you want to bet in the next like 5 to 10 years Blumhouse ends up licensing Scream?
Dude, they're on a rampage, man. They're on
They
a
are.
That's what I'm
might.
saying.
They're like
I can
friggin'
see
assassins.
they're trying
man.
to bring back all the old horror classics.
Yeah, they
which
are.
which I don't really know how I feel about, but you know.
Well, they're doing
It's-
new stuff too, which I mean,
They
like I
are.
really liked Megan. I'm excited for Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But most like half of the shit they do though is continuations.
Yeah,
And
it's just-
you know what?
yeah.
I'm still a goober for them. I will goob up. Get all excited for him every single time, man. I don't even care. But I do agree. I'm like, man, we're just bringing back everything at this point. But
Right. Yeah, I know.
Still a lot of originals
I
out
still
there,
think the Exorcist is going to end up being a terrible mess.
yeah,
Man, I can't wait to see how this is going to shape up. It's almost like you're waiting to see that possible accident, you know.
yeah.
I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch
Well,
it.
yeah, no, I'm going to watch it
I
too.
just-
I'll be right there on opening weekend and
I just
ready to
feel
see
like
what
it's
they
gonna
do.
like you're going to be watching it and you're just going to be like, yeah, this didn't need to happen.
what I'm curious about is the conversation behind the scenes, like when the whole idea was proposed and they said, "Look, we're gonna go back to The Exorcist and we're gonna do this. We're gonna bring back Ellen Burstyn and craft whatever story they're gonna craft." I'm just wondering how that conversation went. You know,
You're
what I
never
mean?
going to be able to replicate what because
Never.
see, here's the thing is that like they're looking at it as like Exorcist had this huge success, or this is how I feel like they're looking at it. Like The Exorcist had this huge success that was 50 years ago now. Like it's time
60.
60, yeah. So I felt like 50 was too short, but it sounded right. And I was like, and I think they're looking at it as like, hey, all these remakes, all these continuations, they're hot right now. Let's ride that. We're gonna do it. But I feel like they're leaving out the biggest thing about The Exorcist that made it successful was there was nothing like that ever. Ever. It was the first of its kind. Like the what it did to audiences and generations and just stuff like that. It's just you'll never be able to replicate it because we're now conditioned. Like I've had people ask, like, do I think a horror movie will ever be able to do what like The Exorcist or things like that have ever been able to do? And I don't think they ever will, because we understand what a horror movie is. There's only so many ideas. Great. I mean, you can take an idea and do your own thing with it, but there's only so many things that demons, monsters, killers, like there's only so many things. You're never going to be able to replicate what things like, the Blair Witch Project, where like you never saw there was no found footage films that were, based on true events. And they did a whole marketing scheme based around it being real and having a website and having like all these like fake testimonials and all this stuff that really had people believing like, no, this is real. I mean, to this day, I know people that still believe that is real. Like you're never going to be able to replicate that because it was a first.
Yeah.
The only thing that could ever do similar, I think, but it's not in the sense of like, oh, it's scary and therefore it has this like, possession thing, and not that you're talking about like satanic panic and all that. Like they're like demons and religion and stuff like that was just at a different level back then than it is now. Yeah, right.
And you've got those classics that came out on that wave, you know what I mean? And it's like at some point, like you said, it's like it's been done. But here's one thing I was thinking of too, is that to your point, Fate, the Exorcist, there had never been anything like that. You know what I mean? So it really,
and it was based on a true story, like from the book of the kid that really did. Like
that's right.
Just everything that went into it. It just there's never been anything like that. The only thing, this is just last point. The only thing that I think will ever kind of be a first that can have an impact on people is when we get to like VR and stuff, where like you're watching a movie and you're actually in the movie. you know, and you actually like see the blood and guts, like people start puking. I mean, like Terrifier, right? People were puking in the theater because of the gut. Like, imagine if you're watching that and you're actually there and you're in this like room where you can feel the blood splatter and you can, you know what I mean? Like, that's the only way that I think we'll get once we get to that point. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. But one thing I was thinking of is that, you know, the other thing with The Exorcist too, as far as the way it was presented, I think it has a very narrow lane as far as what the story is versus something like let's take like Night of the Living Dead. Like that was the beginning, like George Romero is the godfather of zombie movies.
Yeah.
But it has a much wider lane because you could literally do almost anything with zombies, as has been shown in all these different stories that we've seen. Even Romero himself doing another 5 zombie movies, and pretty much all of them, if not most of them, were very good and different from Night of the Living Dead. You know what I'm saying? Because you could have all these different stories about people, because it was about people dealing with a zombie apocalypse. Whereas The Exorcist, you're dealing with this situation with this young child being possessed. We gotta do an exorcism and let's hope it all works out. Bam, that's it. Now, if you go a different route, like they did with the fantastic and severely underrated Exorcist 3, then you got something. But unfortunately, like I said,
they're not
so
going to do that.
Exactly. It's so underrated, so severely underrated. When people think of The Exorcist, they think of Linda Blair. They think of the first movie, rightly so. So back to the beginning of this, I'm just wondering what the hell were they thinking behind the scenes when they said let's do an Exorcist movie, you know?
Well, and also like to kind of build onto that, like there has been what a 1,000 exorcism movies since 1973 that have tried to rip off The Exorcist. I mean, like every year we get at least one. You know, like the Pope's Exorcist is that movie was basically just let's just write down things after watching The Exorcist and we'll make a movie out of it. I mean, they say it was based on a true story, but there are entire plot beats just stolen right from that movie.
But they all do. I mean,
they all do that.
There's been like 30 exorcism movies where they have the exact scene of the carpool. Me and my girl were watching. What was it the other day? We were watching. What was it called? It was some exorcist movie. It'll come to me. But and literally, she was like, "Isn't that the scene from?" And I'm like, "You don't know how many movies have done." I mean, it was exactly. I mean, shot for shot, exactly. Right. Like even the priest standing there with the bag in the beginning. It was like in the beginning of the movie. She was like, "Why do they do that?" I was like, "I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine."
And like at least you know, in like the 2010s, we tried to do something different with it, right? Like Pope's Exorcist, the movie that came out at the end of last year that I can't remember the name of, that was also an Exorcist movie. Like those movies are just the same concept essentially as The Exorcist. It's religious focused. It's you know, there's people get possessed and start saying a bunch of Latin and all this shit. It's the same thing every single time. At least in the 2010s, we tried to do something different, like The Conjuring and Insidious and Sinister, like all kind of playing into that same kind of vibe, but using jump scares is the big thing instead. Some people hate that. That's fine, but at least it's different.
Well, like look at. Did you guys see my best friend's exorcism or whatever? It was like that was actually, it sounded and looked stupid. It was actually pretty entertaining. They didn't fully lean into like the Exorcist level film. Like there was this, you had that, but like it was more of like almost like a comedic approach, but they did it in, I thought was an entertaining. It's not the greatest movie ever. I'm not saying like, you know, like go run to Amazon right now and go, but it was a different take. Like they tried to do something different. I appreciate that, you know, but like, you're right. You see every year there's like just replicated carbon copies of these things. At least like the Exorcist show, at least the show tried to do different things, right? The show was,
I've heard that was really good.
It was really good, but it was something completely, it was like its own thing. But like they even tried with, what was it? Exorcist the Beginning, right? Which I actually thought was half decent. I didn't think it was a bad movie, but people hated it because it was just, they basically just tried to go back to the origins of how, you know, Father Maraneth became and lost his priesthood and got back to the priesthood. It was just like, it was just like, okay, this is clearly a cash grab. Like, it didn't do anything different. And that's just kind of what it is. Just kind of like, okay, like it's like It's like all the studios get together and have a meeting, and they're like, okay, we need a gory movie, we need a Fast and Furious movie, we need a Exorcist movie, we need, and just like list the top 5 things. Like that's what it is. Like it's just, I don't know. It's funny.
I totally, I just can't see how this thing is going to work. But I will say this, and I think I joked about it a while back. If this movie is decent or even good, and I don't mean great, but I mean, you're watching like, okay, all right, well, that turned out a lot better than I thought. I'm gonna be so amazed. Like that's gonna be like literally crazy, because like I said, I just don't see how they can go back down this road, with The Exorcist. I just don't see it at all. The way, I mean, when I think of, even right now, when I think of that original movie, I'm just like, man, that movie was so good because it was just so, bare bones and gritty. It was shot documentary style. I mean, William Friedkin, I mean, it was just a great ass movie. Still to this day. So I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna. I don't even know how they're gonna do it, man.
The other thing about The Exorcist too is like it's just this wonderful slow burn that like, and the way it sets up its characters and where it goes with them is so upsetting. It's the drama of it is so wonderful, and basically every other exorcism film that isn't that movie has fucked that up at some point or doesn't really care about that. And some of them are good here and there. There's outliers. There's absolutely exceptions to that. But my big thing is that if they're going to make another one, you either have to approach it the exact same way as one, which is already kind of risky because you're drawing the, is this just the same movie again card? But can they make it something else? Can they take it another step further? Like, what if this is a secret Evil Dead kind of movie where it's like someone like Reagan gets possessed and starts biting somebody's face off? Like, I'm into that. You're taking it to a new level. You're taking it a step further, and I'd be interested in that if they do something else with it. But I have this horrible vibe that we're gonna see this trailer come a couple of months from now, and it just looks like your standard possession film, and nobody's gonna see it, and it's not gonna do the Halloween numbers that they think it's going to. And I don't want that to happen for David Gordon Green or Blumhouse, but I just think they've hit on a franchise that doesn't need to be continued. Where Halloween, really you can keep pumping out a Michael movie every 5 years or so, and people are definitely gonna see that. There's just a big difference between these franchises that I feel like they maybe don't understand.
Right, and of course, with Halloween, it's not it's become more than a slow burn. You get what I'm saying? Like there's more road to travel in that movie because number one, Michael is the main draw. But if you have a good cast and a good characters and so forth around him, which has happened in several of the sequels, you can enjoy them too. So it's like multiple reasons to draw an audience in. Plus you've got the kills and all that type of stuff. And it's just a different type of classic horror movie that you can still mine things out of. You know what I mean? Derek brought up a good point too, man. The Exorcism of Emily Rose was good. That was a really good movie, man. Yeah. But again, it pivoted away from The Exorcist. You know,
and it was another one based on a true story. And
yes, and it was really about the characters, and it was really like a court drama. A lot of it anyway. So it was totally different. Just like with Exorcist 3, that was basically a detective story. So if they were doing something like that, where they made a big pivot, sure, there's a possibility. But from everything that, at least what I've been kind of getting, it doesn't seem as though that's going to happen. Now, maybe that's a big surprise, and it will be. I hope so, because I obviously don't want the movie to suck. Yeah. Like you said, Jake, I don't want to see David Gordon Green just totally go down in flames.
Yeah, I don't want that. I mean, listen, man, I was on the guy's side until October of last year.
There you go.
that doesn't mean I want him to fail. I really want this to succeed.
How much of like today's horror movies is just audience retention, right? And especially, I think it's only going to get worse, right? Because now we live in an age with like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, where it's just these bite-sized, quick, like people are the retention back in the 50s and stuff like people would sit through a 5-hour movie and allow you to develop characters and build and do everything, and it was like a whole thing. Like you didn't have these like fast-paced type things where we're moving faster and faster, and audiences are being trained more and more and expect boom, 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 boom. Like, like even my girl, I love her to death, but we'll put on a movie and like if something crazy doesn't happen in the first like 5 minutes, she's like, this movie's boring. Like but she's the general audience. Yeah. She's not like a diehard horror fan. Like she loves horror movies. She absolutely loves them, but she's the general audience of like, we need something, we need it now. Like, come on, let's go. Like, why is this taking 20 minutes to set up? Right. And even us, like we've even criticized movies like, man, that was too slow. Granted, usually when we're criticized, it's because there was nothing to kind of drive the story, but still it's like, we have this perception of like, we need this, we need it now. You need to develop these characters. It has to be flowing where, like even the original Exorcist, like you could have cut out like half of that movie. Like it was great. And, it did its job and you had this build. That movie's what, like 2.5 hours, something like that. And like
the director's cut is,
longer. Yeah. The director's cut is like, what the original cut was like 6 hours.
Here's the thing though, like with bigger modern movie, Marvel movies, whatever, you can make that argument. But last weekend, a movie called Beau is Afraid just came out that was 3 hours long, completely batshit, and is basically the opposite of what you're talking about. Like, there's always going to be a market for good horror, for a good story.
But how successful is that going to be?
Like, they're always going to make those, though. Like, that's my point. Like, they're always going to keep making movies like that, even if they start making your more movies basically targeted towards your TikTok people. Like Megan. Like, a bunch of people saw that probably saw her dancing on TikTok. But, like, surprise, surprise, it was actually pretty good. And it's like, okay, it's more than just a TikTok movie.
That was a movie that was... Like, I mean, from start to finish, it pretty much just boom, 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 boom. You had the setup. You had a couple down moments.
Well, Megan doesn't really start killing people till like halfway through that movie, though. There's a lot.
And there's not a lot of kills.
Yeah,
I mean, unless you're watching the
unrated. But there's a lot of like direction. There's a lot of come this way. It's not this slow 3-hour movie where you're like.
But not every movie needs to be that. Like.
No, I agree. But you're looking at it from your perspective as somebody that I'm talking about the general audience. I guarantee you 90%.
Like, you're right, but there is I'm not just the only person who saw Beau is Afraid. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
There's a lot of... Did it only make $3 million in its opening weekend? Yeah, like, admittedly.
That's my point.
But it still made money.
I'm talking about big, like, successful... For horror to have success, right? You can't have a 3-hour slow burn movie. You're not going to have people that are interested. You're not going to get the revenue. There's always a market. There's a market for Trolls, Trolls 2, right? Like, there's people that love that. There's people that love The Room. Like, there's always a market for even just the worst films. For every bad film, there's a percentage that absolutely loved it, right? But to say like, oh, there's a market for it, that doesn't mean that it's a successful market. Right? Like, that doesn't mean. But then
there's some production studios that don't care about that. Like, I don't think Blumhouse would ever make a movie like Beau is Afraid, but A24 already did and will probably make another one like that at some point in the future.
I mean, like, it's the same company that made Lamb.
Dude, I fucking bought that movie. I don't even know why. Like, it's fine. It's so fine, but it's so fast. It's such a fascinating movie. It's weird, man.
It's so friggin' weird, man.
Where do you even start? Where do you even start talking about that movie?
We talked about it, and man, that was the weirdest conversation of all time because you're trying to like make sense of it for people that are listening. But I will say, just to jump into, I will say they're like what you were saying, Fate. Those movies that are slow and the outliers and more obscure. Those are movies that are, they're just not going to be at the forefront of what these companies want to do as far as money. Fortunately, though, you do have, A24 and things like that for whatever reason, they're like, man, this is our wheelhouse. We will do these types of movies. We will do
are cheap.
The Lighthouse.
They don't cost.
Yeah, they are cheap.
They're, like.
But Beau is Afraid probably wasn't a good example because I believe that had a $35 million budget and it only made like $3 million in its opening weekend.
That's terrible.
That's an outlier. But A24 constantly pumps out weirder movies, you know, that they don't do that successful, but they're not like crazy successful like some of the other things we've talked about on this stream. But I think my point is there will always be that artsy studio. There will always be that outlet for, like, I don't want to say good movies because then I'm going to sound like a pretentious douchebag, but like for movies where it maybe has a little more of an artistic feel opposed to just trying to generate revenue. You know what I mean? You're always going to have that no matter where the market gets to, I think, personally.
I don't mind a slow burn movie. Like, I actually enjoy if there's a point to it, right? If it's not just slow burn for the sake of slow burn, right? Like, it has to be like build up. I don't mind. I'm a patient guy. I will sit through a movie. But my point is that general audiences aren't. And it's only going to get worse as, you know, companies and marketing and stuff. There's always going to be, you're right, an art house that is willing to put this on, you know. There's people that still will only wear shoes that were made in the 90s, right? Like, there's always a market for everything.
Well, here's a question though. Do you think that, because I think it also kind of works in phases too, man, because like when you talk about, like, obviously you mentioned the Marvel movies and stuff like that. I mean, the last 3 or 4 Marvel movies, you know, not that they, you know, were crap or whatever. I haven't seen them all, but you know, they haven't done as well as their previous entries. You know what I'm saying? So there is a
but there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of. It's not just the movie. It's there's a lot that. It's not just like, it's the writing. It's the storytelling.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the
I think the biggest
that's trying to get
I think
pushed,
a big part of it too, and not to just get into those types of movies, but I think a big part of it is just superhero fatigue. Because I know myself,
I'm sure there's part of that.
I love, you know, those types of movies, but I've skipped out on like 60 or 70% of the last whatever 5 or 6 of them, because it's just like, okay, all right, you know, you got the movies, you got things streaming. The point I was trying to make is that, you know, you had a period, especially in the early 10s, where, going back to horror, where I think horror did try to slow down a little bit more. I'm not saying they were slow burns, but specifically like The Conjuring and Insidious, those weren't like wham bam boom 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 type of movies. And James Wan had a certain craft that took more time with the characters and set up the stories, and those movies were very, very successful, you know. So I think some of it is phases as well. And I think that, you know, with these Marvel movies and to some extent with horror, you know, having this resurgence with the slasher movies, I think it will go back to I don't want to say slow burn, but what I mean is it just kind of take a step back, you know, more character development, more atmosphere and stuff like that. Because it seems like it happens like that every several years, or maybe every decade or so, that we kind of go back and forth like that, you know. I think it's possible.
I mean, it is, but I mean, even like the Conjuring movies and stuff, like, yeah, they're like 2.5 hours, whatever. But like every like 15, 20 minutes, something happens, right? I mean, even from the beginning, you know, it's like, boom, here, like, it's not
most of them,
these,
but
like,
not all of them. Like,
but like, for example, look at the Devil Made Me Do It. That, like, unanimously, people hated that movie, and it's because they tried to make it about the trial. They tried to tell the real story rather than, you know, movie-nizing it, right? And audiences hated it. People hated that movie. People thought it was terrible and pointless and slow and all that stuff, because there wasn't that like
it was nothing like a Conjuring movie though. Like, that's why I think
that was the real story. That was what they tried to tell you really
let's
happened.
Look at the original Conjuring. Like, the original Conjuring is not at all like the real story that happened. The house looks nothing like the real house. And that's a slow burn, man. That's a slow burn.
But there's
movie.
a lot that was, I mean, they embellished, but that's my point though, is that the Conjuring, they movie-nized it, right? They took the idea of like, hey, this family was dealing with some demons and stuff, and they basically just went over the top with it.
But have you ever read about the Warrens, man? They were total charlatans. Oh my God, it was a bunch of smoke and mirrors. Like, none of that shit happened. Like, I mean, listen, who am I to say? But like, based off of what I've read about the actual Warrens, they were a bunch of, like, they were just fucking with people, is with the horrible truth of it. And I don't know. To me, it's like, I think that if if like whatever really happened, why would you even make a movie about it? It just wouldn't be that interesting. The fact that you get Bathsheba on top of a dresser, Joseph Bishara, and all this crazy makeup jumping down at the daughters of this family, that's fucking terrifying. You know what I mean? Like I love what they did with it. Is it based on a true story? I don't care. I just love that they made a crazy paranormal movie. And it's still a slow burn, though, I guess is my point. Where Conjuring 3, like you said, it's a little more procedural. It's a little more about like the trial that happened around this guy who claimed that the devil made him kill somebody. It just wasn't a Conjuring movie. I think that's why people didn't like it.
Yeah, I think so too. It was just kind of, it just felt off, you know. And I didn't hate it, you know. And a lot of that is because I absolutely love Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson together. I didn't hate it, but I definitely think it's easily the weakest of the three. Like it's not even, I don't even have to think about that. And part of that is because I think the first movie is just so good. And I thought 2 was really good too. So, yeah. All right. Well, hey guys, it looks like we're going to get ready to wrap this up, man. That was, how did we get to the Conjuring?
I don't even know how that. We were talking about Scream, weren't we?
Dude, we started with The Exorcist, and then talking about remakes, and then we got into slow burn films.
Okay, yeah.
And then so it kind of everything flowed. It all made sense. On
it
the
all
playback,
made sense.
people will be like, "This makes sense."
Like, okay.
I hope so.
When you're done, you're
these
just like,
guys
"This sounds
talking
like an
about?
absolute mess."
Oh my god.
I just
All
want
right.
good horror movies. That's what this.
Me
boils
too.
down to.
We all
Make good
do.
horror movies.
Who
all
doesn't
do.
want good horror movies? Come on.
That's right. Well, and one thing I will say before we sign off, and I mean, I think we're getting them. I mean, look at last year. I mean, look at all the really cool I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, people loved everything, but there are a lot of variety and good horror movies from last year alone. Like, you know, you pretty much had everything. So I think horror is, you know, it's doing all right. So for you guys in the chat, thanks for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit the like button. It helps support us. We'd really appreciate it. And let us know in the comment section down below what you think of everything we talked about. I know a lot of you guys had some good conversations and about films and the industry and so forth. Leave us your comments and we'll talk there. And we will catch you guys next time. Peace out. The collective has spoken.
Peace.